all illegal entry will immediately be halted, and we will begin the process of returning millions and millions of criminal aliens back to the places from which they came.
Sean, we talked about reactivating defence, and your interpretation was that's going to be to secure the borders and participate in the process of identifying those people that shouldn't be in the US for whatever reason and deporting them. To do that, you've got to have a country to send them back to. I mean, planes are literally being lined up as we speak to take people out of the country. There's several million. Somebody even said, as high as 10 million. That's quite a lot of planes. One of the countries is Honduras. I'm not sure exactly, but it could be 100, 200,000. Honduras are not happy, and the President Castro has stood up and said, if you do this to Honduras, then we're going to close the US military base.
Yeah, this is, again, part of a interesting quid pro quo, isn't it? It's one thing saying you're going to deport lots of people. It's quite another, actually. What does the President of Honduras, what levers have they got available? Soto Cano is the US military base that they've said, right, if you deport all these people, we'll shut down the military base. If you look at it strategically, that military base, I'm not entirely convinced that if there wasn't a base there today, would the US build that base there today? I don't think it's got particularly strategic importance. It's got a 12,000-foot runway, which means that it can operate almost anything. I think it's used for aid, flying around the world and the like. But I'm not entirely sure the Americans would miss it if they pulled out. And actually, quite the opposite. I think that the Honduras would pay a huge price if America pulled out. My understanding is there are around about 1,500 US personnel based there. That's not dissimilar in size to some of our bases, Royal Air Force bases in Scotland. I remember Lossiemouth and Kinloss were, I think it was Lossiemouth that was closed down for a period. And when I visited the area, the effect on the local community was absolutely devastating because that money is no longer being brought into the community.
And there's a supply chain.
No, exactly.
Behind the base itself, so...
Yeah, but it's people, if you're employed, that's military personnel, 1,500. You might well double that with the civilian personnel, so they're being paid to be on there. They all spend money in the local community. They buy cars, they buy fuel, they go out for meals. There's a whole ecosystem that grows up around that. Honduras would undoubtedly pay a high price if they decided to do that. So I'm not entirely sure. It's a good for the media. I'm not entirely sure that's a valid and credible option for them.
Yeah. Well, I was listening to a commentator pretty much said the same thing. He also said, they might just shut it down, allow it to be shut down, because of the reasons you've said, or they move it to another friendly place like Guatemala, where they wouldn't have any issues. Or they threaten to stop the aid. I mean, it's like 200 million of aid to Honduras. That wouldn't be very comfortable with it as well. So I think Trump's probably got some leverage here, but maybe it's a bit of grandstanding on the part of the president in Honduras to appeal to her own population. So
I think it's a really good example, though, of what Trump is clearly trying to do here. He's trying to sweep away all of the original deals that are out there and go, hang on a minute, America is being exploited here. And the very fact that part of the perceived problem about illegal migration, and I think one of the things that I would pick out particularly for this example is that, people might criticize Trump for trying to solve the problem of migration, but you and I have very different views sometimes about President Trump and his impact around the world. But one thing I have to hand it to Trump is that he made very clear before the election he was going to solve this, and within literally hours of coming into power, he's already putting ideas on the table of how he's going to solve it. If you look in our country, the Labour Party under Keir Starmer made all sorts of promises about migration, and yet we're now 6 months in to the new government. To my knowledge, it's actually gone up. It's not gone down.
Yeah.
And therefore, whilst I'm somewhat sceptical about the way Trump goes about things, you can't fault the fact that he's really clear, he's bringing common sense to the table, and he's got a plan, and he's going to make it happen.